co-host.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we're good.
I was going to.
Did you
I'm gonna mute everybody and then come off mute. All right, go ahead.
good morning, everybody. It is May the 5th,
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. Il Cinque di Maggio. But that's mainly a Cuban thing, I think.
Called the Mayo.
So today, of course, the slaughterhouse of failure is not in our destiny. We shall persevere until we succeed. And that actually has some little thing about mantras that whatever you keep repeating to yourself, you eventually will believe, good or bad. So that's one of the reasons we keep talking about or having this little mantra on slaughterhouse of failure, because we've got to remember that all the time. That's not in our destiny. We will persevere until we succeed. Today, we're going to talk about scarcity mentality versus abundance mentality. And there's actually a lot to talk about that, but this stems from a book that that Dan has selected, which was Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it, that's one of the must reads, actually, which people can learn a lot from. So the scarcity mentality versus abundance mentality. Dan, if you want to start that, then I'll chip in as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things I think we should define first and foremost, and what is scarcity mentality. Scarcity mentality is, you see life as only having so much. There's only one piece of the pie out there, right? So you always have this fear that if somebody else gets too big of a piece of the pie, there's not going to be enough left for everybody else. Whereas, this abundance mentality is just the opposite. There's enough to go around for everybody, and we need to support each other in their endeavors and hope for everybody's success. I want people on my team to be more successful than I've been, because then I've done my job. I've shown that abundance mentality. I've led through leading by abundance and that abundance mentality. And most people, they're just really scripted in that scarcity mentality. They live up learning the scarcity mentality. You fight for meals. I grew up in a family of 10, and we truly did need to fight for food at the table, because there wasn't enough to go around. But so my point is that I was kind of brought up with that mentality that you had to, there wasn't enough to go around. So it's just a mindset shift, and we need to shift that mentality to an abundance mentality. And I can tell you, since I've been practicing an abundance mindset, that really, really good things happen to me almost on a daily basis. I've been volunteering with a food bank for children. I set up a 501c3 for tiny home communities for homeless veterans. I want more for everybody around me, and I can play a role in providing that. So, people with a scarcity mentality also, they have a very hard time being genuinely happy for the successes of other people, even though sometimes, it may be their own close family members or friends or associates, whereas the abundance mentality, it really flows out of an inner sense of personal worth and security. It's the paradigm that there is plenty out there for each and every one of us, and there's enough to spare for everybody, and we can all be successful and have a piece of the pie. So Covey, in this book, he tells us that when you live in a world of scarcity, you compete for all of these available resources, even when there's an abundance of them.
So actually, in notes that I've got, I was going to talk about, one of the things I'm going to mention was precisely about this, growing up in a big family. And I see Rose wrote that she's one of 13. in her family. So, I think the mentality and the attitudes that we have in life obviously are founded by the parental upbringing that we have, and by the how many siblings we've got, and how our parents brought us up. Were they strict? Were they lenient? The jealousies between the siblings influence our characters as well. So as the abundance that we have, and the generosity that we have, or the stinginess that we have, I think have all got to do with looking at our childhood upbringing. So from there is where we need to introspect also when we're taking action, when we are doing something, when we're acting in a certain way. I think periodically it's a good thing to have a little introspection and say, why did I just say that? That guy didn't deserve what I just said, or why did I act like I did? Or, so these are things that I think are obviously to do with our upbringing. So the things that we need to look at in terms of how we act with the people that are around us, including the people that work for us, are, for example, the few things that Covey talks about was offer words of appreciation. Well, actually, I have a friend who wrote a book called You Are Number One, and it's where he talks about in corporations, just saying thank you, take an interest in some of the things that the team members are doing, cherish and share the moments with them, make them feel good. People will remember you how you made them feel. What do their kids do? His main pretext was, I believe in you. I appreciate what you do. Your colleagues are watching you. I've actually spoken to sometimes people that are like negative or just not very nice people. And I've just said, you're such a nice person. And you say things like that, and it kind of gives them a mind shift to say, well, wow, thank you. And then they start acting better. Say, wow, you were so generous with your opinion, or with what you gave, or the tip you gave, or something. And it starts to ring in when it comes from somebody else too. On the helping or talking with the people that work with you.
Yeah, your influence and happiness will increase in direct proportion to the appreciation that you show your team. And especially those team members that may not be being productive, and you'd like to see them be more productive, and they'd like to see themselves be more productive. So, I consistently reach out to people on my team and just provide words of encouragement. And when they get a win, I call to celebrate that, because it's about appreciating them, showing them that you appreciate them. And it is really one of the fastest and simplest ways to build a more abundant life, is by showing this appreciation to others. And then the second thing is choosing to see opportunity. The next time you're faced with an obstacle, flip it around and consider it an opportunity. We talk about failure and how important that is to your success. Look at failure as a positive. Look at that as an opportunity to grow. Look at it as an opportunity to propel you forward and past obstacles to reach a higher level of success. You'll be surprised at how quickly problems dissolve, and how soon optimism can become your default mechanism, right? You flip the switch, you make those problems, you turn optimistic within those problems, and really make them something that's a positive. And once you've done that over and over and over, it just becomes your default. You just don't see failure or failure as something that's negative. You know, it's changing your mindset to allow it to automatically happen, that you don't see failure as a negative.
Dan, I just want to go back to the first part that we were talking about, where offer words of appreciation, before we just get onto this part. And I want to mention this. You know, we have our steps of success in our business. We become a gold, we become a lapis, etc., etc. You know, we often don't appreciate, or we don't applaud enough the people who've made an advancement. I remember I actually lost a distributor who was a Ruby. She became a well-known person on TV, but she actually was a 5-time winner of the Cadillac on the Mary Kay business. And when she advanced, you know, I just called and said, wow, good job, you know. She said, oh my gosh, in Mary Kay, every time you do anything really well, they bring out the parade and they make a noise and everybody's celebrating, and, you know, the whole team is calling and so. And I think this is something we should do a bit more of with the people who are advancing in their pin titles, because it is an advancement, it is a progress, it is a success. And I think we should, you know, be more participative in each other's successes as we go forward. Just wanted to mention that as in terms of words of appreciation. And on the opportunity, you know, Dan, you actually said it first that I can recall. When COVID came along, you said, don't waste this crisis. And many people here took heed to that, and they understood that, and they reinvented themselves. I'm in Colombia right now, and there are many, many people who have become very successful through social media, and they started it during COVID. So in my case, when the crisis came of COVID, you know, I actually made a post, and I was criticized for it, because I said, thank you, COVID, for forcing us to reflect on the amazing things we have and took for granted. Because when COVID came, it took away from us, apparently. I saw that as being an opportunity to introspect and to see all the great things that I've had, and to be grateful for that. You know, and for being able to have discussions with family that we didn't normally have because we didn't have time. We were all in lockdown. So the crisis that happened was an opportunity, and it was an opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves, restructure, and introspect, and go forward from that in a positive way.
Yeah, going hand in hand with seeing you know, obstacles as an opportunity is, you know, being very careful about the company that you keep, right? You've all heard the saying, one bad apple spoils the cart. And that can be no more true than, you know, allowing someone into your life that is negative about everything, that doesn't have a positive growth mindset, that has a fixed mindset, that has this scarcity mentality, you know. So reevaluate those people in your life who may not be adding to your life, but detracting from it. You know, I've said this before, you know, I've kind of pushed people out of my life that weren't, you know, necessarily good for my life in a number of different ways, whether it's emotional or financial or physical, or, you know, whatever it may be. You know, I want to surround myself with the best of the best, and I want to surround myself with good, positive people. And that's why these healthcare forums that we hold every quarter are so important, because the mentality of everybody there is so positive. Everybody's so nice. Everybody's interested in improving their health. Everybody has an abundance mentality that even if you don't take somebody out there to learn about the business, it's worthwhile going for yourself just to get that reset. Because if you're not surrounded by the right people, that's going to start to lead to some decline in your life in different ways. And so just getting out there to reset and be around positive people and form those relationships and get closer to people that you want in your life is super important. So, you also want to remind yourself that there's enough for everybody. Like Covey said, there's enough pie to go around. So break that nasty habit of comparing yourself to others, and just constantly repeat to yourself, there is plenty for everyone. There is more than enough to go around. And these things kind of all combine, this abundance mentality, retraining your brain to see positivity or seeing opportunity in obstacles, surrounding yourself with the right people, reminding yourself that there is enough, they're all intertwined, right? And so you need to look at these four facets that we're talking about, or that we've talked about so far, and really think about, are there tiny tweaks? Maybe your life's great, but is there one tiny little tweak you can do to it to integrate into your life to make it even better? Maybe there's a whole host of things. I mean, I've changed a whole host of things over the last 5 or 10 years, and it was a slow process of looking at what was detracting and what was a positive, and how I can incorporate that into my life and incorporating the right people into my life. So look at these 4 things, because they're all intertwined, and make tiny tweaks to them, or make big tweaks if you have to.
Well, so the mantra, whatever you tell yourself over and over, you will believe. So I said in the beginning. And when we talk about definite purpose, one of the things that you can do is to do a definite purpose statement. If you focus on your definite purpose statement, and in our little 90-day book that we can get from One Team Global, they've got your definite purpose statement. And on this definite purpose statement, if you focus on exactly that, you will not see scarcity. You'll just see the abundance which you are bringing into your life. And if you say that as a mantra every day, and you read it over and over, that will become your definite purpose statement. It will become a reality, and it's focused solely on positive things, on abundance, on what you see, where you see yourself in 1 or 5 years' time, what you will be doing, how you will be doing it. And you're living that already in an abundant mind. And then you don't even see the scarcity. There isn't any scarcity. And what you see around that may not be as positive as you think, you'll ignore the negativity of it. And that's where you start surrounding yourself with positive people. And quite to your point, the Utah trip, the fly-ins, the trips we have to Utah are exactly those, where we are seeing people who are searching for some clues and some answers to how to reach their maximum potential. And it is a positive vibe. Everybody in there has got this positive attitude. And we grow from that. We grow from the positivity, and we grow from hearing and seeing and tangibly seeing how other people have overcome obstacles and how they continue to grow. And this is the fuel that fuels us to go forward. And the example of Utah, I think, is an excellent example, because it's a little drink of positivity when we see the laboratories. It's a little, we have a little, we see the menu of all the good things that are there, and we can hone in on those, all the great improvements the company continues to do and have. I'm here right now in Colombia, and there's a meeting tomorrow. I don't know how many thousand people will be at it, but it's going to be massive. And there's such a vibe of positivity when there's a collective vision of success. And that I think will overrides the negativity.
Yeah, it's important to spend time in reflection. And when I say reflection, I think the first thing that comes to people's mind is what happened in the past, but that's not what I want you to reflect on. I don't want you to reflect on what happened in the past. What happened in the past is in the past. Forget it, move on, move forward. Think about the present, think about the future, but be grateful for the things that you do have, all the positives in your life and in your work. That's very important to this positive abundance mindset, and showing gratitude. That's a powerful aspect of this whole abundance mindset. A grateful heart is at the center of an abundant life. Be thankful for what you have. I was at a memorial for one of my cousins who had a very short battle with pancreatic cancer this past weekend. And when her husband was saying some kind words about her, one thing really stood out to me. He said, Jean never wanted for more than what she had. She was happy with what she had. She was always thankful for the things that she had in her life. She was always loving to those around her and abundant with her time and energy with children, because she was a school teacher. And even after she retired, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer the day after she retired from like 35 years of teaching. And so, he never, one thing that he said was that she never had a retirement, because she was diagnosed with a horrible disease the day after she retired. But through that, she was always happy for what she had. And she had a very close place in my heart, because when I look at her, I see a younger version of my mother, and they're both very much the same. I don't even know that they know what an abundant mentality is. They just live that way, or they live that way. They don't even know that it's something, they're not striving for that. That's just who they are. And so we want to make that part of the facet of who we are, and then, although it sounds counterintuitive, one of the best ways to increase your abundance is by giving. Don't think that there's not enough to go around. Give to others. You have plenty. No matter how little you have, if you put it into perspective, you have more than most on this planet. So always remember that. And I want to challenge everybody as we're getting closer to wrapping it up here. Showing this abundance mentality can really set the tone for your organization as a leader of your organization. And that's going to filter down to other leaders that you're creating in your organization, right? Because you're teaching, you're living, you're showing that abundance mentality. So I want to challenge everybody on this call to foster an abundance-minded culture on your teams, in your life, in your family this month. Encourage people to see options and opportunities when they face obstacles or challenges, and express appreciation regularly, and recognize others on your team and in your life who do the same.
Well, Dan, the Dalai Lama used to talk about, or he wrote about the state of unsatisfactoriness, and where people are always talking about being dissatisfied with what they have. Well, if we have this mindset of positivity, it's a mindset, it's not even an attitude, it's just a mindset. It's inculcated in us, how we believe, how we think. I used to tell people that worked for me, I used to say, look at that blank wall. That's your future. There's nothing in it. Put what you want in there. What do you want? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be sad? It's your decision. Do you want to be mentally wealthy? I mean, do you want to have satisfaction or not? What is it that you want? Put it in there. And then when you then you have no excuses. You have no excuse to say, oh, something didn't happen. That's the blank wall of your life. Put what you want, exactly what you want in it, so that you'll always be grateful, because you will achieve what you want. If your mind is convinced and you have trained yourself to believe the things that you want, that you are, that you want to be, then they will happen. They really do. And it's a surprising thing. I mean, I've had many times in my life as well where people have been unbelievably kind about something that I don't know where it came from. People I don't even know. And it's, I believe, what goes around comes around. And it's a positive mentality mindset. And I think that's something that we and I like your challenge too. Let's find within our circle of influence people that have, think of something. Let's find the way to get into a positive mindset from whatever may be a negative thing that's happening. Whatever it is, hopefully it's not a disease or anything, but there may be challenges that we have. Let's find the positivity. Let's challenge all the people in our circle of influence to find something really good about some negative stuff that's going on. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find that your positive outlook will spill over and influence those people around you, because we're all leaders. Leadership is influence and nothing more, nothing less, so we influence the people around us, whether it's at the grocery store, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, on the highway. It doesn't matter. As you build an authentic and sincere abundance mentality, you are going to influence those around you in a positive way. So let your mindset be your biggest asset. And remember that there's plenty for everyone.
100%.
Comments. There's lots of good comments
Yeah,
in the
lots of stuff today.
Comment section. I think this is one of my biggest obstacles was having a doctor walk in and tell me that I had colorectal cancer. That's a huge obstacle. It's like, how do you, I thought cancer was for everybody else. I was like, I'll never get cancer. That's for everybody else is going to get cancer. I'm never going to get cancer. And then to have somebody walk in and tell you that you've got cancer, I didn't even think about the negatives. I just said, I'm going to beat this. It's not a big deal. I've climbed higher mountains. This isn't that difficult of a task. You just have to keep a positive mindset, and keeping a positive mindset through it all is what I did. And I firmly believe that was a huge part of my recovery, was just never having a negative thought about what was going to be next. What was the future? What caused the cancer in the past? I don't know. You're never going to know. So why even worry about that? Just worry about how you're going to get better.
Yeah, that way of thinking is where we can apply it to our daily lives without having to, undergo such a dramatic experience. But it's a good lesson. I actually talked about one time there was a lady interviewing for the directorship of a big company, and she was interviewed, and the person who was interviewing her said, well, and what if you don't get the job? And she said, I didn't even think about it. It's not going to happen. To the interviewer, she was so cocky about her attitude that the interviewer said, you stunned me. It's not an option. I'm going to get it. So it's attitude, mindset. Anybody else got anything?
Apparently, Bradley thinks that you have a movie star voice, Lawrence.
Actually, I'm totally raucous today because I did not. Yesterday we had and the altitude here is like, I don't know, 10,000 feet or something. And the oxygen is not so abundant. And I've been beating my jaws all day yesterday. So I'm actually raucous.
It's okay, Lawrence. We don't expect you to be 107% every day, but 97% is acceptable. thank you guys for hosting again a very powerful, positive and empowering call. I show up because you guys are phenomenal leaders. I show up because you guys are positive. I show up because genuinely I'm a huge fan of both of you and everything you do. And I feel like you guys are my extended family. So thank you for leading with your heart. Okay. So I support you all the time, Dan. Thank you for doing your marching orders and getting your 501c3 going. And we are going to do great things, Dan, with that for sure.
Awesome. Well, I just want to remember everybody that Jane comes for Lawrence, but she stays for me.
That is right, Dan. That is right. Great reminder. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact.
I got to go and see my shrink now because that's wow.
All right, everybody, have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
weekend. Go out, practice some abundance, show people that you care about them, show them that you support them the best way that you can, and start cultivating that circle of influence that you have in your lives, and let's spread some abundance.
God bless. Thank
Right,
you, everybody. Have a
God
good
bless.
week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great call.
Have a great weekend.
Thank
Great
you
call, guys.
kindly.